No, we are not advocating for killing the leader of a foreign country or regime change. That is not the policy of the United States.
In your position, I was suggesting we bomb Belgrade. I was suggesting that we send American pilots in and blow up all the bridges on the Drina. I was suggesting we take out his oil supply.
Is that if you look around at all of the wars that we fight to this day, there is this very direct connection to the petrodollar.
Way back in 1996, shrugging off the documented deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children, not a small number, 500,000, because imposing sanctions on Saddam Hussein was, quote, worth it.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it? I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies.
I'm sick of this stuff. How the fuck is the BLT $6, bro? Cause now you gave me tight. I'm about to come back in and smack the shit out of you.
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. Tonight we're going to be celebrating the end of the petrodollar. That's where we're at. Things are unwinding pretty quickly. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward with the value of the dollar as well as just international trade. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit. Before we get into it, I have a new tool that I'm using tonight, courtesy of Zebedee, and it is a streaming tool. If you tip the QR code, it's gonna, and you add a message to it, it's gonna show up on screen. So kind of fun to play around with. But yeah, how you doing, Skeef?
Doing pretty good.
So I heard you're running for political office.
Maybe. What?
You were tweeting about it.
Oh, I forgot about that. That was before the anti-Ben thing. Yes, I was gonna be a senator running on the platform of mandatory marijuana. I did not like all the people running on the platform of making Bitcoin legal tender. I thought that was a pretty horrific strategy. So I thought mine was a lot better.
Yeah.
But these days, most of my energy goes into being an anti-Ben activist.
Gosh, I mean, you think about people would lose their minds if a politician came out and was like, it's like advocating for mandatory weed use, and it'd be very entertaining. That'd be a great troll if that actually happened. It's fun to think about things like that.
Yeah, what's the whole idea? I don't know. Another violation of my body, my choice. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty ridiculous thing. Just might be a little bit fun.
Yeah, definitely puts it in perspective for a lot of people. But yeah, what's the deal with the whole anti-ban activism?
Oh, there's just way too many bends in Bitcoin. There's far too many. They've got a whole council. They've got this giant subversive element. They're trying to 51% attack the male names in Bitcoin, and I think it's a big problem. I don't like any of them. I don't like, especially Ben the Carmen and Kiwi Hodl. I don't like them at all, and I think that a lot of people are not aware of how big of a problem it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting opinion.
I developed it on I think Wednesday.
I can't help it. I'm just sitting here laughing at how straight-faced you guys say this shit. To anybody that doesn't know who you're talking about, it's like, what's wrong with Benz? What is the problem? But we all know that there is a council of Benz out there we have to be careful about.
I have to say, like, prior to your feud with the Benz, I was pretty agnostic to the Council of Benz, and then after hearing your arguments, I instantly became anti-Ben.
Well, and one time I told this story in a space last week, I think, but Ben the Carman had the nerve to come up to me and tell me that if I were to have a child in the future and name that child Ben, then I could potentially probably be an honorary member of the Council of Ben. And so my response to him was, so you're telling me not only do I have to give my child an awful, just terrible, horrific name, but then I also would be affiliated with this just terrorist organization? It's a terrible proposition. I don't know. I was still very upset by that. Very, very, very angry with him.
Yeah, that seems like some major LARPing on their part.
Kamala's Crusader, how you doing?
Hey, good. How's it going?
What's the good word about Kamala lately?
I don't know. She had a really good speech about the passage of time today, and I thought it really spoke true to a lot of things that I hold deep in my heart. Also about the passage of time, because she's right when she says that you can really see it in children, because like when you see a child grow up, you can see the passage of time. So I don't know. I just thought it was, a good message for today, and the things we're going through, and thought it encapsulated it well.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're a big fan of Kamala Harris on this show, for sure. She's a great president, has a beautiful laugh.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Yeah. Black women just make everything better.
I was talking about, I think they should put her on Mount Rushmore. I think that would be a great move.
Definitely have the prettiest teeth.
So yeah, kind of curious. Let's get into the petrodollar. So I was drove to Denver and back, which was kind of crazy. But I listened to When Money Dies on the way there and back, which is a really good book if you want to get an idea of like what was happening in Germany as they were experiencing some pretty crazy hyperinflation. And, the verdict's still out on whether things are going to get even remotely close to what it was there. But I think there's some similar themes going on. But yeah, we're looking at the dollar losing its reserve status, which I think would put a lot of inflationary pressure on it. Kind of curious on your thoughts, Steve.
I was going to say a really good podcast on that too is, so I've been showing that Martyr Made podcast where he's great, but on his main feed, there's an episode on Ukraine, and he starts with the Weimar Republic after World War One, and like the hyperinflation that they went through, the implications of it, all kinds of. But I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting perspective on that. Like starting with the uncertainty and the instability of the Weimar Republic, and then how that goes into the current Ukraine sort of situation.
Can you link that or restate that? Which podcast?
Yeah. I'll find it and I'll put it in the nest.
So what are the links? Like how are those things linked together?
Oh, so I guess it just basically like the instability in that region, and like how the different countries were treated after World War One, and so essentially, and especially after the breakup of the Soviet Union too. So like a big example that he cites in there is, so when the Soviet Union was breaking up, the standard playbook was they basically go into, say, Poland, and they have this like playbook for how they private the IMF being there. The IMF goes in, and they have this playbook for how they privatize the industries, everything state owned, all from the top to bottom. And then they have this support for that with like IMF loans or whatever, and it wasn't, we all know the problems with the IMF, but it was somewhat workable, and it wasn't terrible. It wasn't as terrible as it could be, which is what they did in Russia. And so what they did in Russia, just, the breakup of the Soviet Union, they came up with this whole like bullshit scheme to distribute shares to all the citizens of these supposed state-owned entities. And then, long story short, 58% of the wealth of all of Russia is owned by 7 oligarchs. And they, I don't know, like a lot of that stability like goes back through the world wars and goes back through like all these periods where they just get absolutely just their face just ran into the dirt. And then, there's whole countries that, because of the fights between these, corrupt fucks on top, then it's like the populations that get screwed over. And it's like there's like how willing they are to like cause people to starve to death is another thing that's so wild. Like they, in the negotiations after World War I, that was a big thing that they held over Germany, was they had the naval blockade in place like 8 months after the war had ended. And so while they're negotiating, they're like, oh, do you want food in your cities for like children? You better agree to these terms. Oh, do you want this city, do you want all the kids and the women there to starve to death? No? Okay, well, you better agree to these terms. And it's just, I don't know, it's pretty fucked up. I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, super interesting. Wouldn't put it past them, too, to intentionally create a lot of difficulties in the food supply to make the citizenry very upset and make it easier for regime change to get what they want.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And I'd say real quick, another really good book, Once Upon a Time in Russia on Audible. Super, super good.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things about this book, When Money Dies, is pretty much everybody started speculating in the stock market, in the German stock market, and thinking that they were getting rich. And people are this is interesting about psychology, and like this came up a lot about unit bias with Bitcoin, but people are so like focused on the nominal value of whatever their currency is or whatever the asset is, versus like its true value. And this is something that's really interesting where, $100,000, like making $100,000 salary in California is probably about equal to making about $60,000, $50,000 salary in Arizona, in like Phoenix or Tucson, just based on the cost of living differences there and taxes and stuff like that. And what all these people did is they were speculating. They think they were getting rich. And when inflation ended up slowing down, they realized that they had lost a ton of money in their purchasing power, maybe 60% of their entire purchasing power. And so those assets that they were holding on to were not really worth anything. And we're seeing that now with the shitcoining and just stocks in general.
And I haven't read When Money Dies yet. I want to really soon. But I know a big thing that also happened during that time is that like the people who bought everything up were the people that had access to like foreign currencies, people who could get dollars and pounds. And I don't know how much physical gold or silver played a role, but I know that like people who could get dollars and pounds in and could buy things with that, were very, that was a lot, the people who acquired a lot of the assets in that environment. That got me thinking is like in that kind of environment, Bitcoin's pretty well set up to be the most accessible, saleable currency in that kind of environment. And so it's like, imagine all the currencies that you're dealing with are falling apart, and there's one that is reliable and that people want to use.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the book, it didn't talk a lot about physical gold, because the mark was supposedly backed by gold. And so people thought, it was redeemable, even though they were experiencing this insane inflation. But yeah, there were some people holding dollars and other foreign currencies. And there was a guy, it was pretty interesting, talking about, he essentially was running a speculative attack on the mark where he would go and take a massive loan, put it into dollars, the dollar increase or the way it held its purchasing power allowed him to pay off the loan and then go back and do it all over again continuously. And that's, we heard in this last major run up, we heard a lot of people doing that with Bitcoin.
Yeah, there's a lot of games like that you can play with in a hyperinflationary environment. That was in that Once Upon a Time in Russia book I mentioned. They had stories in there about like all the different games the oligarchs played with inflation. Like this one guy, I remember, he had basically car dealerships, and what he would do is he would negotiate these terms, so that he would pay for the cars 6 months, 8 months, a year later, at a time when there's just hyperinflation going on. And so he gets the car, he sells it, he turns that into real money or assets or whatever. And then 8 months later, he pays off the bill with like just hyperinflated bullshit rubles. And I don't know, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us like that with dollars.
Yeah, I mean,
there already is. I mean, that's essentially what a mortgage is.
This essentially breaks the Dave Ramsey model completely.
100%.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, I mean, we're seeing pretty serious inflation. What did anybody up here on stage know the definition of hyperinflation? What the threshold is for that?
I do not.
I'm going to look it up real quick. Well, regardless, so like kind of going into, why are we talking about that?
I can tell you what it is. It's got to be, it says, while inflation is a measure of the pace of rising prices for goods and services, hyperinflation is rapidly rising inflation, typically measuring more than 50% per month.
Okay. So I don't know if we've seen that across the board. Yeah, I wonder like when we hit that threshold, because I'm sure we've seen that in like individual goods. But I wonder when we're going to hit that threshold across the board where we can confidently say hyperinflation is here.
The title of this space is End of the Petrodollar Party, with some of the stuff I've been hearing. Seems like it might increase the rate at which we reach that hyperinflation state. When countries stop using the petrodollar, I think it begins to unravel. I'm not an economist at that level, but I listen to a lot of smart people explain it, and we're heading towards a cliff, and I don't think we have any breaks.
Yeah.
What I just dropped in the nest right there, that chart, it says overall inflation is 54.6%. Figured I'd share that since we're on the topic.
Well, that's not what CPI says. So it can't be true.
Right. But I mean, CPI is definitely, it's verifiable for sure.
Yeah. I checked. Yeah, exactly. I checked the CPI numbers with my node. So Steve Hanke says hyperinflation was a term coined by Bitcoin hater Steve Hanke. Fun fact. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like Steve Hanke has some good takes and he's got some pretty bad takes, but I think he's just old and senile at this point. Doesn't have a lot to offer us, but yeah, I mean, like the whole idea of like the petrodollar ending, this has been a discussion for a long time. Saudi Arabia just suggesting that they're going to be selling oil in the Chinese yuan was a pretty big move. A move that maybe 20 years ago would have gotten them invaded and a regime change. And I think it's things like that are leading people to believe that this could be the end. And yeah, as far as it like a big reason why the dollar is able to hold so much value and, the inflation, like the Fed and the government, they can print so much money, and the inflation is just outsourced to other countries because they hold dollars in their reserve. And when people are using dollars abroad, and there's more demand for the dollars to be held, that lowers the inflation rates here, essentially. But one thing that's interesting too in this book, When Money Dies, is one of the things it talked about is that the velocity of money increases tremendously when inflation starts happening. And I think we've seen that over the past couple of years, especially with real estate.
I put Don's tweet from the other day in the nest, where he said last time the petrodollar was threatened, we had 9/11. Kamala's Crusader, especially. I'd be curious if you have thought about that or what you've been seeing about that. Like the idea of like them, like another false flag coming in to justify some sort of petrodollar reaction.
Well, we're obviously waiting on the new cyber attacks, right? I think that's one of the things that I've been kind of like expecting, anticipating, kind of being when you see little signs of like little ones popping up, trying to drive up the, the anticipation and the fear for the big one, right? But I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked up enough into like the specifics and looked up what like the Great Reset shit's doing, but I don't. Anybody else want to expound on that? Like thoughts on cyber attacks and shit like that? Because I feel like that's the next and biggest step, because that's going to cripple the financial market, and I think that's kind of the burning down and where the phoenix rises. It is from that moment. I would almost assume is how I picture it in my head.
Yeah, I mean the cyber attacks definitely come in, and they're pretty open about that. And it also seems like they're talking about a chemical attack over in Ukraine, which might be a catalyst as well to really ramp up control.
Well, I mean, I think what's hard to tell now is I feel like the COVID narrative really fell apart. Nobody was anticipating that. So the audible may be unpredictable. I'm not sure. I don't know what the fuck, anything about chemical attacks. That shit. I know what you're talking about. I've been hearing that shit like, oh, there's chemicals in there and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. What would a chemical attack do, like, beyond, I don't know, is that like pretext for war or what?
Yeah, if they could blame like a big biological weapons attack on Russia, I imagine that would ramp things up quite a bit.
Yeah, it's like false flag. Yeah, chemical war, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's the big argument. And as we know, when a country's at war, all civil liberties go out the window. And that
they need to bring the claims down.
One thing I was wondering is how do you guys feel like you'll navigate all this without the brave leadership of Larper Hodl? Cyber pandemic prophet.
I need to. Dude, I've been gone for like 2.5 months. I don't know what the fuck. He ended up losing his credibility or what?
He just left. He was basically a discount, like a Dollar Tree version of Whitney Webb, and in my humble and correct opinion. And I don't know. He had a whole big dramatic thing about deleting his account, or whatever. I don't know who started calling him Larper Hodl, but I like it a lot.
Yeah, it had a good ring to it. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I've been preaching that shit to people, like, oh yeah, look, I can predict the future. There's a cyber pandemic coming, and that one just ain't. That one's lingering back. I don't know when the fuck that one's gonna hit.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It would be pretty convenient to have some chemical attacks come out, and then for them to really ramp things up, and for the U.S. to use that as pretext to then launch cyber attacks against Russia and receive cyber attacks and retribution, or at least that's the way it's framed to the
Right.
plebs.
And then we need to vaccinate the internet because, you know, it's just wild. It's too crazy out there. You can't do it safely. You need us to protect you. So, you know, just trust us and we'll get you set up on the safe internet.
And that, you know, the game plan is shut down the internet, and once the digital ID is ready, and then require the digital ID to get back on the internet.
Exactly.
That's something we've talked about on here too, is like the CBDCs, like what, you know, presumably that's what they'll use for UBI and all that. And it's like, my position is that stuff should be treated like, you know, smallpox blankets that they used to, you know, the federal terrorists used to hand out, you know, in the 1800s and all that. And it's like, me personally, I wouldn't take the deposit. I wouldn't turn it into sats. I wouldn't use it to buy shit. Like, I don't want to touch that stuff at all.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think there's going to be an offering. I don't think you can get it out of the system. You're like, it's like buying, you know, coupons for, you know, forever. You know, fucking stupid.
Yeah, and it's like you get a little bit of free shit in exchange for them, you know, getting that much more of a foothold in controlling your life. Fuck that.
Well, this is super funny too. Is like, you know, we know that all of the governments of the world have terrible infrastructure when it comes to cybersecurity, and their solution most likely will be some sort of centralized digital currency that they control in response to them being attacked or attacking themselves with some sort of cyber attack. And they're just going to collect more and more data. Very, very backwards. That's a good narrative I think we could be pressing right now, kind of preemptively. But yeah, I mean, this brings up a topic like as a potential solution to help mitigate this. So we've got some awesome people at the Arizona Bitcoin meetups who've really been pushing Azteco terminals. Shout out to Doug at BitRamp. I can't get it in the screen. But these terminals, essentially, it's just like a phone with a little paper printer on it. And it allows for people to buy Bitcoin with cash. And so I got this, and I'm going to be facilitating Bitcoin sales at work for my coworkers, no KYC. And a lot of them have never experienced Bitcoin before or have any knowledge. And I think it's a great opportunity to, you know, their first introduction to Bitcoin is here's a way to buy Bitcoin, no KYC. And then here's how you self-custody it, because Azteco essentially forces you to self-custody it because you just have this piece of paper. You can't really, you're not buying it on an exchange in any way, shape, or form. And, you know, these guys have been doing it at the meetups, and this is something I want to be very vocal on going forward and normalize this idea that this is a much better way to purchase Bitcoin than other options out there. And yeah, I mean, it's just like we see how like BlockFi got hacked, Unchained got hacked, and it wasn't like a catastrophic hack, but there's a very good chance that nation states are behind this and creating a lot of fuckery there. And at this point, there's really no excuse not to be self-custodying your Bitcoin.
I really like the idea of doing a farmer's market booth. Like have copies, like, you know, like little Bitcoin book for sale at cost, Bitcoin standard for sale at cost, you know, Azteco terminal, bunch of free information, you know, bunch of printed out stuff you can just take for free. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to share the terminal with you. And like if you want to set up somewhere to give it to you to go do. But yeah, I mean, I think the pop-up markets that are on the side of the road out near where I live are great. as well as, farmers markets. And I think that like I've been trying to brainstorm, like, how do we get Bitcoin into the farmers markets and into those circles? And I think the best way is just to go and start offering it and then demoing it to people that are interested, of like, this is how you would spend it if you wanted to, and maybe bringing products to sell there as well, to give people a reason to do it. And I think that's the best way to integrate it in, versus going and trying orange pill people at their booths. Gun shows too. Gun shows are a great place to do that.
I'm gonna tweet out that idea and ask people for what they think should be like a absolute requirement to have there.
At gun shows or at farmers markets?
The farmers market. Probably be pretty similar kind of booth to what you might set up at a gun show, though, too.
Yeah.
Just more, I don't know, maybe a different lean.
Yeah. I mean, I just think this stuff's like super important. And like, I think, one of the things that I've done is I've spent way too much time on the complex philosophy of Bitcoin and trying to orange pill people in that way, where I could have just been actively showing them. And I think for a lot of people that's a lot more effective. They want the practical reasons of why Bitcoin is a better money rather than the philosophical ones. And you can get to the philosophical ones later, but I've always seen that. Like, I can tell people about Bitcoin, but showing them a Lightning transaction is a game changer. I can talk about hard money all I want, but talking about, mining, how you essentially can plug a computer into your wall and it turns electricity into money. People get that for whatever reason a lot more. And I think it's huge. Like, Tucson's a massive cash economy. A lot of people are just not doing well financially, economically. And those are the people I'd much rather target than the yuppies up in the foothills. So. The nice thing about this idea too is you're just posting up for people that are interested. It's not like aggressively putting it in people's face. And I think that's a good way to find the remnant. So.
Yeah, definitely.
But one thing that was kind of interesting, the guys that are really like backing this Azteco movement at the meetups, they said a lot of the responses they're getting from people is pretty like negative, which I thought was interesting. I just don't really see a ton of negatives to this.
And is that from businesses that they like approach to run an Azteco terminal, or who?
No, just people at the meetup and people on Twitter. Like people that are in the Bitcoin space.
Oh, weird. What do they not like? They don't like the 5% fee, or what?
Yeah, I mean, they say that, but I mean, 5% is typically a lot lower than your typical ATM. They're not taking into account the spread that's sold to people as well, which is also typically pretty crazy at ATMs, whereas Azteco sells spot. And then there's this whole like question of legality, and it's 100% legal. And even if it was, wasn't legal, that wouldn't be a good argument against it. Yeah, I don't know. I think we just need to get it out there for people to see. Rope is Surfer Jim. Have you ever interacted with Azteco before?
I have once before. It worked out fine. But the guy who sold the Azteco cards to me stopped offering that, and I didn't bother looking for anybody else. But it seems like a reasonable system.
That's a negative for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to see this is a big part of what we're doing at the Arizona Bitcoin Network is pushing these Azteca terminals and trying to get them adopted. And I hopefully we'll see them saturated all over Arizona in the next year. And the stuff that Doug's doing at BitRamp is so cool. But yeah, having the conversation sometimes with people that buy on exchanges to try and get them to pull it off into self-custody can be pretty painful. And just skipping that step straight into self-custody, I think, is great. Well, we've got Zorn in the chat. Welcome, Zorn. Oh, here's something I had on the list, Skeef. So one of the arguments I think will come from a lot of, your minarchists and status is that if we have an anarchist society in the United States, then China's just going to come in and rule us. And there is a potential for China to have the new reserve currency. I don't know how likely that is just because of how much of a shit show China is, but it is a possibility. So, wanted to talk about that. You got any thoughts, Keith?
Sorry, I was doing my farmers market booth tweet. I just sent it. What'd you say?
Oh, I was curious. I'll just talk about it. So, I mean, the idea that China is going to come in and take over the United States or conquer it if we have an anarchist society, I think is pretty silly just from a geographical standpoint. I think it's practically impossible to take over the United States. And, China, there's a lot of talk of them invading Taiwan, but it's going to be difficult. And I mean, just to give an example, the United States wanted to invade Cuba for a lot of years and tried to assassinate Castro quite a few times and ended up launching a pseudo invasion via the Bay of Pigs and failed miserably. And I think in an anarchist society, where people are armed and not restricted from owning weapons, people can organize in some pretty fantastic ways to fend off an attack like that. So I just think that's kind of that's my perspective.
The physical invasion of the U.S. Even in my wildest, most pessimistic dreams, I don't see that happening. I think what they're worried about is the influence of China, especially all around, especially in Africa and everywhere else. But what I worry about is the not so much China taking over, but the same people that have control of China, basically the Davos crowd, doing just gaining more and more control here. I'm a lot more concerned about them than I am about Chinese government or the Russian government or anybody else.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important we support these free markets as much as possible. We were joking, I don't think it was last week, but the week before about how raw milk is the way that we win this thing. And I think there's some truth to that, as silly as that meme is. Because when we truly support free markets, we're essentially that's one of the best ways to defund these maniacs. And same goes for the drug markets. I don't do drugs, but I think there's something interesting there in people being able to trade outside of the system. Zorn was offered a job at an NFT shop. That's pretty funny. Zorn,
NFT shop?
Yeah.
Like a website where you buy them?
Yeah, I don't know. Was it a physical shop, Zorn, or was it an online one, like OpenSea? And then Zorn also says Skeef, the farmer's market booth babe.
The booth babe. That getting booth babes might increase the budget a little bit too much.
Well, Zorn was calling you the booth babe.
Oh boy, I'm in trouble. We're in trouble if I'm the booth babe.
Yeah, Planet says China is a paper tiger that's entirely dependent on the wealth of the West to buy their products. If you thought the sanctions were tough on Russia, sanctions will demolish China. And then Zorn said, yeah, making NFTs for some metaverse BS. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good point, and I think we talked about this on here. The codependence between China and the U.S. is pretty real, and that might make it more difficult for China to realistically create the world currency or have the world reserve currency in the future.
Yeah, I was listening to one of Marty Bent's. It was either Luke Groman or it was one of the recent ones, and he was making some compelling points on why China wouldn't even want to have a reserve currency status. I'm not going to try to recite them because I just butcher it, but I think it was the Luke Groman when it came out like last week.
I mean, I think the biggest reason why they wouldn't want it is because it would make it incredibly difficult for them to export and would just completely demolish their ability to manufacture goods and services.
That was one of the main ones. Yeah, you got that.
Yeah, this is something that was interesting in Germany when they were experiencing their hyperinflation in the 20s and 30s, was that they were able to export tons of goods, and manufacturers did pretty well during that time. But yeah.
Is that primarily because their costs were all in that bullshit hyperinflating currency?
Well, I mean, that's part of it, but a big part of it is just like people want to buy cheap goods, and when your currency is worth less than another currency, so like people in the United States using the dollar have a higher purchasing power than the Germans did with their hyperinflating currency, so they were able to export goods for a lot less money. So that's kind of why, and that's why you see, in the news, people talking about China intentionally devaluing their currency to be able to continue to export goods for less money. That's essentially what they're doing. I mean, it's like the same concept. Like when you go down to Mexico, things are cheaper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, so I came up with an idea this week. I was talking about it a little bit before, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to create a version of Gas Buddy that tracks drug prices locally. It would be an online website, and so like some of the things that, concerns that came up were that the feds would be tracking the site and collecting IP addresses, which I thought was interesting. So that might be something to try and mitigate that I'm not sure how to do. And
for someone that doesn't do drugs, you are very obsessed with the cost of drugs. Is there something you want to share with us, Tucson?
Well, it's just funny. Like when you're talking to normal people and you ask them like, hey, have meth prices gone up? They get incredibly uncomfortable. And there's just something I find that very entertaining.
If you do meth, bro, just say that. We're not going to judge you. I used to do it. It's a good time for about 3 days, and then it wears off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't judge people that do it either. Like,
it's more affordable than I realized too.
Yeah,
you don't have to eat as much.
Yeah,
you won't have to eat lentils.
I mean, the whole point of why I think this is interesting is because it's just making a mockery of the U.S. government, essentially.
Yeah, that's a good point. drug war's still been going on for 40 years, was it?
Yeah. All of these wars are wars on people. Yeah. What's going on, Mr. Robot? How much does meth cost where you live?
How much? What's going on, guys? How much is what?
How much does meth cost where you live?
You said gas?
Meth.
He doesn't know what's going on yet.
Tucson's trying to crowdsource data on the price of crystal meth in various locations. Obviously, don't say where you are, but just curious what the price of meth is, where that is.
I have no idea what it is. I'm not
Specifically, we're looking for
know
1/16th of an ounce pricing here. We've determined that that's an appropriate amount to find out about.
It's about 1.5 grams, a little bit more.
We figured out it's 1.75, but that's not the point. We want to know what that costs. And secondarily, how long would that last approximately? There's a Twitter poll out.
Which apparently not very long from what we learned. Before we started recording, I said the most exciting thing I've ever done is weed, so I'm not an authority on the subject.
A gram of heroin/fentanyl costs about 120 down here where I'm at in Alabama.
That sounds like a lot. Is that
heroin?
A lot of money?
No, a lot of. So I guess the similar question. The question I posed when we were talking about this earlier was how long would that much last? Like I don't know, like somebody who's a user.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on the tolerance of the person. Like for me, when I was like deep in that shit, man, I run through it in a day maybe.
Okay.
Just slamming fucking needles into my arms and between my toes and shit. Just your tolerance, you get, builds up kind of quick, and it's just you got to do more and more and more, and then you get some shit that's too strong, and you fucking got to get Narcan.
Gotcha.
Yeah, heroin's a awful drug. And yeah. I mean, my whole stance is like, I used to work in, Zoran asks, how do I arbitrage meth? Pledit says, I wonder if Meth Buddy would act as a self-fulfilling prophecy where the website itself would influence the prices people charge. And yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like it probably would make the market a little bit more competitive if people could compare prices.
Well, it's like I said a minute ago, like meth is relatively easy to make, so it drives the price down anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Meth Buddy is a good name for it. I might use it. I mean, my first thought was to take this and make it an Onion site, but that would kind of limit people's ability to access it, so I don't know.
I like Meth Buddy, but you think we could trademark Metherium? Metherium? You think somebody would think they would mind that?
Maybe that would be like another URL that links to the site. But
yeah.
I mean, this would be really funny. Is like if you could create a futures market, or betting market based on drug prices on Ethereum, because that people
financializing meth now.
Yeah, because people on Ethereum would lose their shit if somebody did this. They'd be very upset.
If it's like easy and cheap to manufacture, there's probably not going to be much futures market, though. I wouldn't think.
Yeah, you could do a lot of really interesting stuff with this.
There could be a lot of interesting work in insurance, though. Like, how do you black market, free market insure a meth lab?
That's a good point.
Each industry is going to have its own little niche, kind of niches, whatever that word is. People can fill.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
contract security. There's just some opportunities there.
Brandon is a bio lab, and you can get free government insurance for it. Boom, done.
This is kind of related. We were talking to some people who had like a mining business and talking about just kind of the difficulty of getting connected with a bank, basically. And I said, well, why don't you just say it? Because that's like the bank, basically, once they hear Bitcoin, they don't want to, have a relationship, no matter what it is, even if it's like mining, which is just profitable as fuck. And so I said, well, why don't you just say you're a drug trafficking business and get an account with HSBC? Like that's what all the Mexican cartels.
That's a pretty good idea. I mean, the best part, like if you built stuff like this on Ethereum, is we'd find out how not censorship resistant it is real fast. Zorn says if I drive 2 towns over, the meth is only $1.70 a liter. Thanks, Joe Biden. All right, sorry. You can talk now, Skeeve. What were you saying?
Oh, nothing.
I feel like a liter of meth is a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of grain.
Yeah. Well, stuff to think about here. I think it'd be a really fun project. I think it would really upset a lot of people in a good way and be very controversial. And that's why I find it super interesting. So I will do some more research and continue to talk about this idea as it develops on here. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about this week was Space Karen. That was a big moment this week.
God, that fucking guy.
I hate that guy so much.
Yeah, I think everybody here got blocked by Space Karen this week.
The thing that I can't wrap my head around is these people that can't. So I don't know. Like the question I asked several people directly is like, do you at least see how his idea set, his framework for evaluating this could be a state attack to frame Bitcoin as a weapon that needs to be regulated? Like, do you at least, is the probability at least higher than 0%? And it's like, just even in question framed like that, some people lost their mind and they're like, oh, this, I don't know. It's just, because to me, that's obviously exactly what is happening. And so, when I'm talking to somebody and they can't even entertain that as a possibility, I'm just kind of thinking, all right, well, I don't know where we go from here, but you have a nice day.
Yeah. I mean, curious, Surfer Jim, do you think this was as big of a moment as your moment with Chamath?
Oh, sorry, I tuned out for a second. What moment are we talking about here?
We're talking about the Space Karen Jason Lowry.
Oh yeah, I've been watching that implode all week. That's been a little bit interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny, He comes across, he shows up on everybody's radar like a year ago, and he sounds kind of smart. Nobody really knows who he is. We find out he's working for the man in the Space Force, and I don't know, I guess they teach you to think violence over there because he is essentially tried to equate Bitcoin with violence, or that it's like a violent weapon or something. And I think after enough of it, people were getting sick of it. And, I don't know, a lot of people thought he was like so brilliant. And I don't know, like he picked up a shit ton of followers, man. I really thought he was great. And I don't know, it seems like he had a meltdown because people kept calling him on it. Like, Bitcoin is not violence. Bitcoin is peace. It's kind of weird how everybody jumped on that bandwagon. And like, I saw Breedlove jumped in because he had him on 5 episodes in a row discussing it. And to do my own homework, I listened to most of them. I really wanted to find out what was the big deal with this kid. And all I heard was him regurgitating the sovereign individual in his own language. And I went, This is nothing new. What is the big deal here? So it's I'm just sitting back laughing at the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the idea that you brought up, Skeef, is about it being a state level attack is pretty interesting to get into, I think. Yeah.
And then one other thing I was thinking is, like, if you're blocking everyone who retweets an Adam Back thread, it might be time to reevaluate.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, when Adam Back, in his most polite British way, calls you out on it in like 20, tweet thread, it's time to pack it in and humbly, go away with your tail between your legs and rethink your position, because Adam is pretty nice to everybody, and he was actually super polite about it, but he called him out on that totally.
Yeah. And let's say, hypothetically, Adam's even wrong, which he's not, but, like, let's say he is. You're still going to block everybody who retweets that thread? Come on. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought his meltdown was interesting.
It's pretty fun, yeah.
Well, it looks like McCormack melted down this week, too. Didn't he quit Twitter?
Ooh.
So something about that today. He's getting sick of people calling him out on whatever they don't like about him. So
no, he's got people that can tweet for him to make him sound smart. So we should be good. We're not going to miss nothing.
First thing I always do every single time I make a new account after I get blocked is I mute Peter McCormack. That's priority one.
Yeah, I will have to, admit that when we started this show, I had a positive opinion of Peter McCormack, and that's definitely changed a lot over the past couple months.
I don't actively hate him like a lot of people do. I just don't ever want him really. I don't know. Every time I do hear something from him, it seems like net negative. So I try to ignore him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate him either, but it's just like kind of what Jim is saying. These opinions are just dumb. They're really just lame.
Yeah. And he's a blue pill status. So I treat him like I do the other blue pill status.
He's a tree.
He's a tree. A corgi.
Well, we have, speaking of trees,
yes, I love this idea. Ephesians, you talking about Ephesians' plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So one of the this is actually Hodl Tarantula's idea that Ephesians rolled with, which I think is pretty interesting. But one of the things you can do with Bitcoin mining is you can burn biomass to generate electricity, and you can do that by cutting down trees. It's pretty interesting.
What do you think about the idea of doing it with mesquite trees around here? Do you think, like, setting up a basic little, hey, I'll come out and rip out your mesquite trees for a little bit of money or free? Do you think that would get enough wood that you could run one of those things he's talking about? I think he said a cord a day for 50 kilowatts.
What is a cord? What is this?
Cord is like a big, like a full-size pickup truck bed, completely full. Like
4x4x8.
What's that?
4x4x8 feet.
Yeah, that's totally doable.
Joe with the numbers, running the numbers.
It's a pallet that's like 8 foot tall of wood.
Hey guys.
Who's that?
Was that Clancy in the background? What's up?
Yeah, it was Clancy.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally doable because one of the things that's interesting is all of these landscapers want to get rid of their, like, I don't think if you were going around, I think it's a bad move to go and remove the trees yourself. But what you could do is set up a bunch of relationships with landscapers and have that buy the wood off of them for a very reduced price, because a lot of them just give it out for free. And this is something a lot of people do is they have landscapers drop off mulch at their house for free because they're just looking for a place to dump it. And so I think that's pretty interesting. And another thing on that is the mayor of Tucson, Regina Romero, decided to plant 1 million trees over the past couple of years. And it'd be nice to chop those trees down for Bitcoin mining.
That's a Democrat government at work, planting trees in the desert.
Yeah.
I was thinking mesquite because it's so hard, like so much harder than the other stuff. I know you can also get free wood chips from the dump. Anyway, Mr. Robot, go for it.
Hey, I didn't mean to change the subject, but I saw Joe was in here, and I wanted to see if he would want to talk about Bitcoin.org being blocked in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, like I had total brain fart whenever I tweeted that earlier. I mean, that was Cobra went to court or didn't go to court. Craig Wright sued Bitcoin Core and the developers. And so Cobra, literally because he didn't show up, I believe the story is that they have to flag it in the UK that you can't download Core or the white paper there. Evidently in the UK, someone who's probably a legal expert in this fucking room can speak to it. But in the UK, in the United States, you're innocent until proven guilty. But in the UK, I believe it's like the opposite. Like you're guilty until you prove yourself to be innocent. So because Cobra is an anon, he did not go defend himself. So literally, like Craig Wright won that case by default because there was no challenge.
Fucking bitch.
Fucking bitch.
Fucking bitch.
I could be wrong, but I think that's right.
So when did that happen? I haven't heard that news yet.
That's probably honestly like a year old when that case went down. I felt like it was last summer, maybe last spring.
Yeah, the case was old. I didn't know that anybody was trying to access it from the UK and got blocked. That was like the first I heard about that.
Yeah, weird that it's showing up. I mean, like, I feel like I've been to Bitcoin.org recently, and I don't remember ever seeing that flag. I mean, I had my VPN on, but I had it like based in the US. I didn't have it in the UK, and it was popping up on screen. So, yeah, I don't know. It's the first time I saw that flag before.
I'm sure that's not stopping a lot of people from downloading the white paper or Bitcoin Core.
I just want to find, a humble 100 acres heavily wooded on very cheap now that I've got that fucking brain virus from Ephesians.
Ideally covered in black locust.
Yeah, ideally, right.
I'd like some black cherry too, but I have that same thought.
Have you looked into that of like using wood for electricity?
I've looked into using wood for power to generate my house. I mean, that's there's a couple of companies that my friends use to run their entire farms with a big wood stove. So it's something I have to do a lot more research, but I've also got the brain sickness now, and it's all I can think about. So
cool. It seems pretty viable. Like from the numbers that some people were running, like even buying the firewood was looking like it would come out to around like 5 cents a kilowatt. And then let's like presumably, like the idea was, if you could buy a large piece of land with a lot of trees on like one of these USDA ag loans, which have just absolutely insane terms, like 40 years, 3% interest, little to nothing down. Like it's great. It could be, could be pretty viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the idea of like getting the relationships, like Tucson was saying, finding the waste wood in all different applications. Yeah. I mean, that's the sweet spot. So,
I've been doing that for like 6 years now. I got a bunch of arborists that just drop it off at my house. And I've moved a couple times, and my buddies still come and drop off wood wherever I go. So yeah, you just call them up, build a relationship with them. There's also a company in America called Chip Drop, and Chip Drop will drop off wood chips or large stumps. And around here, there's a lot of locusts, so I get that. But yeah, just build a community of people.
That's awesome. Another angle we were talking about was like getting it. Like, you know, it's probably going to be really green when you get it, and so like using exhaust from the miners to dry it out faster. Like finding a way to do that.
Hey, Skeeth and Joe, what were you guys? What was being discussed in terms of the mechanism of burning the wood? Like what type of an oven? So, like, I'm picturing something that's super efficient that extracts all the heat out and also somehow reduces the smoke exhaust to make, you know, to burn it the most efficiently, maybe super high heat. And I watched some discussion this week about this, and I never saw specific talk about where is this wood being burned in order to turn it into electricity to run miners. Are you guys aware of what mechanism is being used?
That part I don't know exactly. I know we're looking at like gen sets, or I don't even know, right? Honestly.
I'm looking it up right now. Biomass generator.
Yeah, I'm just curious to, you know, like what kind of efficiency do they burn? What kind of temperatures? What kind of exhaust comes out? You know, if you're burning wood, typically, you know, you see smoke coming out of a chimney. I would think people would possibly consider it too much pollution if it wasn't somehow done super efficiently. And of course, you'd want that just to extract as much energy out of the wood as possible. And then I wonder if there's a use for the ash to, you know, for some type of concrete product or some, you know, some kind of way to, you know, keep it as green as possible. You know, I mean, you need energy to create electricity, right? So wood is stored energy, and if a lot of it's just laying around on the ground or it's nuisance wood and it can be turned into energy and made to run miners efficiently without polluting the environment, it seems like something worth doing. I mean, a lot of wood just goes into landfills, as like B was saying, you know, the landscapers drop off chips because they got to pay to dump it in a landfill. So like they'd rather just give it to people for their gardens and stuff. But if you can just burn it and not pollute, it seems like a good idea, honestly. At first, when I started seeing the talk about this last week, I'm like, come on. But, you know, if it's done really well, maybe. So I'm curious to know what kind of mechanism burns this wood.
Yeah. And the way of getting it from the landfill company, that opens up. So out here, you know, in Arizona, there's tons of places you can get just an absolutely just piece of shit patch of dirt that's just garbage for super cheap. But that could be where you run everything, because it's like if you're bringing in the wood chips, you just need a big enough piece of land that people aren't going to bother you or care what you're doing, and then have all that stuff set up out there.
So the people bring it to you. You don't even have to go get it. You just like, hey, come dump it all. You can even charge them to dump it, and then you burn it and make sets out of it. Like instead, you charge half what the municipal landfill charges. Everybody starts going to you instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you have to pick it up, like you can get like an old dump truck or something like that. But yeah, it sounds like they would just come and drop it off. Like if you're like, hey, as many dump truck loads as you can get that you want to just come put on my property, go for it. That could be pretty attractive if they're paying to get rid of it.
Yes. And that wood ash is rich in lime and potassium. You can use it in your garden. I mean, use it sparingly, but it's a fantastic soil amendment. So there's a lot of ways to keep everything in the same system.
Yeah. So
what's up, Mr. Robot?
Me and a couple other people had an alternate, kind of like we're thinking out loud. It was a while back, and it never really went anywhere. But has anyone ever thought about building their own Tesla coils and then finding out how much power you can get from that, and if it would power like one miner, and then go from there?
That's interesting. So how do the Tesla coils work?
from my understanding, from looking at it, it uses the energy from the earth, like on the ground. Like you can make wireless energy out of it, or electricity out of it also. It's just, I don't know the legal ramifications of like how big you can make it. And obviously you can't make it like he did in Colorado where he's got it going through his barn, but I'm not sure in the US, I'm not sure how big you can make it or if you need permission to even do it.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, I got somebody listening here, Mr. G. If you want to bring him up, he might know more about this. But he sent me a DM to a Wikipedia page on biogas, and apparently this is this is going on already. People have large facilities to recycle all kinds of manure, municipal waste, plant materials, sewage, green waste, food waste. It's a renewable energy source. I just started reading this thing, but the technology is out there, actually. It's just a matter of having the right economic incentives. And Bitcoin creates a whole bunch of new economic incentives. Like a couple of years ago, nobody used flared natural gas to run Bitcoin miners, but that's a huge industry that's building right now. Why not this, right? And Mr. G would know. He's in the recycling business. He's a speaker, dude. Speak up. Tell the folks, man. You're in the recycling business. You probably know a lot about this shit.
What's going on? Yeah, and I just stumbled in the room because somebody else pulled me in, and this is a good topic, like producing your own energy. It's not too bad because so biogas, I just found out what it is also. So the whole process is just anaerobic digestion, right? You're just producing methane gas from organic matter, like waste food, compost, that sort of thing. You have to push it inside of you have to house it in a container where basically it's like the mechanism, basically you have to like burp it and that sort of thing. But I'm pretty sure it's fueled off of organic matter. I'm just reading up on it right now, and you can actually buy these kits for the anaerobic digestion off of Amazon. I seen they're like just basically large inflatable like bags, and they hold the gas in there. So now one bag wouldn't necessarily be enough to power a station or anything like that, but you could figure you could scale it from there how much fuel you can actually get from how many tons of raw material you process, and it's 100% clean.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, this is a topic that I brought up was going to landfills where you're going to have a lot of that. And the gases that are produced off of the landfills are just essentially flared. But it'd be interesting to do that with compost, even on a small scale. Yeah, so what I was reading, Jim, is there's two ways to take this biomass. You can build it into like cubes to burn. And essentially what happens is you burn whatever the fuel is. It heats up water. Water turns to steam, spins a turbine, generates electricity. And then the other way is like what Mr. G was saying, is that you could get the gas and essentially do the same process.
I think that it involves essentially like a type of fermentation where the stuff is degrading naturally, and I wonder if there's a way to accelerate it. But yeah, you're turning it into gas and then burning the gas. And if it's gas, like propane, you could run directly into a combustion engine instead of like gasoline. You can run propane. They have them, for generators all the time. So that's certainly one way it looks like it could be done. I just wonder if burning and extracting the heat from burning it like at super high heat so that every bit of potential energy is sucked out of it, and then not letting that dissipate into the atmosphere, but turning that into essentially, if it had to be turned into steam to run a turbine, but then hopefully you would recapture the steam after it goes through the turbine, it cools back down and recycles, so you have a closed loop system. It seems like all this stuff is out there and possibly already exists, and you could find a way to scavenge up garbage on the planet, whether it's the trees that have fallen down, trees that are encroaching in places where people don't want them, landscaping debris, even grass clippings, whatever is biodegradable and burnable. If it could be reduced down to like just the purest ash and extract all the energy that's in there out of it, why not, right? We bury this stuff. So like, why not turn it into electricity and Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Hey, let me say something real quick. There's another Bitcoiner that he actually runs a centrifuge, and what he does is he basically gets like the waste vegetable oil and he turns it into diesel. So, if there was like a way we could run like a centrifuge or something like that, it would require like some kind of like cooperation or something like that. But a centrifuge, basically, you could just go door to door in the businesses, like a local city or township. That's plenty of like raw material right there if you're just running a centrifuge. And centrifuges are pretty cheap. So that's like that's another way of harvesting waste gas and everything like that to make diesel too. Like basically like a diesel generator is what like the end result is going to end up being, I think. Like, going to have a whole lot of diesel mechanics around here.
That was one other thing that we looked at was waste vegetable oil into diesel, because I actually about 6 years ago I was basically going through the process. I was going to turn a diesel truck into running on vegetable oil, but at least in several of the places that we looked at, it looks like there is federal, like there's basically federal credits, so that these companies, so like the company that goes around and picks up waste vegetable oil from McDonald's or wherever, they get essentially, it works out to like $3 a gallon of credits to turn that into biodiesel, or to give it, and that, so that like jacks up the price quite a bit. So I think like just the cost of making biodiesel is somewhere around $1.50 a gallon, and it's by the time pretty reasonable. And then it's like an even cheaper way would be if you could convert the diesel engine to run directly on vegetable oil, which can be done. But it seems like the racket around vegetable oil collection is pretty crazy with like tax credits and stuff like that. But that was one idea, and then the wood to create electricity idea was another one we're playing around with. But anyway, I'll shut up. Gnostic, what's up?
Yep. Okay, I got my speaker on. Garbage to electricity. Was looking at a installation in just south of Detroit in Michigan. It was about $150 to $200 million to put in the site with credits. Ran all over the place, but the NIMBY effect wasn't really good and nobody wanted it in there. But the amount of money available to go into garbage to energy, whether it's generating Bitcoin, there's a number in Alberta, in Quebec, there's 2 garbage to Bitcoin generating factories going in, and there's about a half a dozen scheduled to be put in the United States. Various counties actually want it for employment and for local baseload power supply, but it's got to be near gas, because the supply of garbage isn't that consistent to be able to maintain a baseload power supply for baseload generation of power. Oil, cooking oil, and the rest of it. There's 2 publicly traded companies coming up that are doing oil rejuvenation. The rejuvenation part of it, the restaurants really want, because it allows them to recycle their cooking oil without having to throw it out. The difficulty is that if you throw out your cooking oil, you're actually getting it robbed in your back before the garbage trucks can actually come and pick it up, because both recycling costs and the bonuses you were talking about basically make it better for people to steal it than it is to wait for somebody to sit down and do it. So people are having to put locks and padlocks and multi-locks and screens around their waste oil, which is what's creating the demand for the recycling. Not even so much to save money on the rest of it, but just for security, because the guys that are breaking in really don't care about the damage they do to the back of the shops and the oil reclamation stuff. And it's just the whole system has to be dealt with in a different way, just because the bonus for recycled oil is so high now You're literally having trucks coming in and stealing the stuff before the recycle truck can come in and pick it up, and it's just turning into a disaster. So there's solutions being brought up in all of these. Some are very high cost, some are very low cost, some are high tech, some are low tech. But they're all coming out as the price of oil goes up, and the benefits for theft are increasing simultaneously. I guess that's my addition for the day.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Hey, Gnostic, where are you from, bro? If you don't mind sharing.
I'm in Vancouver. I run a news agency, and I'm a venture capitalist and investor in stock markets. So that's where I look at all of these things as a venture capitalist to sit down and put money into them, which is why I get so much of it.
Yeah, this stuff is...
Yeah, that's cool.
I have so much faith in small-scale Bitcoin miners. We're going to see some pretty interesting stuff going forward.
Well, the issue that's going on in China, where they made it illegal, just shoved everything into North America and pushed the demand for all of the echo generation electricity through the roof, along with the bonuses, the carbon bonuses for doing it. Just you couldn't. The number of middlemen that were bidding on contracts for resale to Chinese Bitcoin people was just through the roof, up in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet you couldn't get commitment on it. You couldn't get anybody to sit down and close on it. They just wanted to take an option on the rights to do it and then resell that. And by the time they resold it, the actual Bitcoin miners had come in, found the people, and tried to bid around them. And it's been a real mess for about 8 or 9 months. There doesn't seem to be any solid ground in it, and it's actually undermining the whole garbage to energy process right now. And people are just waiting for it to settle before they try and get back into it again.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happening in the traditional markets going forward, I think, in regards to mining. And I was kind of curious if anybody saw Steve Barber's tweets as far as him talking about the unsustainability of large Bitcoin mining. But I tend to have... I do believe that to a certain degree, that I think the small, medium scale miners are going to be able to really lead in this area versus the large scale companies that buy lots of stuff.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that theory because, like miners, they always have to sell, right? So they're incentivized to keep their operations afloat. So let's say there's like a downturn in or whatever like that, they're selling. They you know, in 2018 there was like a selling and it looked like they may have capitulated, but they didn't. But you know, miners are self-interested and they don't necessarily mine essentially to protect the network. They mine to get more coins or, you know, make, you know, scale up their businesses and things like that. Whereas like smaller scale miners may be more incentivized their coins and everything like that, because I think the sats are going to pay off essentially. Like, let's say you mine today and you hold your coin, you know, 10 years, your savings are going to probably pay for your entire operation when you look back. So, you know, that's that way to look. I mean, that's how I view it. You know, I think the small scale miners definitely have the incentive on their side.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for small scale miners is they're going to be a lot more agile. And like when you look at Riot, for example, they have everything centered around one massive facility, and that's a major point of failure where if you have a lot less equipment and infrastructure, you can pick up and move a lot quicker. And there's a lot of reasons why that's beneficial. But I mean, I think from the regulatory standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And just Bitcoin mining is such a horrifically competitive field and market, and people just get wiped out over and over again. And I think so. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think things are kind of trending in the favor of the big miners at the moment. Like, we're watching a lot of the newer machines coming out requiring 400 plus volts to be able to operate. And if that's the case, it's going to be less advantageous for small scale miners, but we'll see what happens.
But you also still have Intel coming out with, their chip for the ASICs so we still got to see what that's going to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about what Joe's thoughts are on that, because he had some pretty good tweets on the Bonanza 1. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what people's thoughts. I was in a Bitcoin kindergarten room a few weeks ago, and people were talking a lot of trash about the Intel chip, as far as like saying Intel's woke and ESG friendly. And I had the perspective that the Intel chip is, really beneficial because it's going to bring a new level of competitiveness to the ASIC market in general, having more chips out there. But yeah, curious what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, I think we were in that same space, and I don't know who was talking about it, but it might have been Optimus, but or Shishi, I can't remember who, but they were saying that if you're in the IT market right now and you're making CPUs, you're making GPUs, you'd be a complete fool to not get in the miner game right now. Like, you're going to miss out on a whole bunch of shit. I think that's what they did. Like, they figured out there's a shitload of money getting dumped into it, and I think that's what they did. And then you're going to see AMD follow suit, because anything Intel does, AMD does, and if AMD does it first, then Intel's going to do it. So you're going to see a competition on miner chips coming down the road. Watch.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Blockstream ends up doing.
I think it's really huge that Intel has entered this market, because they are the oldest chip maker. I forget what the name of the company was before they were called Intel, but they definitely have the most money, the most resources, and you know what? Like, I wouldn't discount them. It really makes no difference at the end of the day how woke their company is or anything like that, because you're pointing your miner to whatever mining pool you want. And if if that type of behavior causes them to create much more efficient chips, everybody wins. So who cares? But of course, we also don't want the majority of we also don't want, Intel to become, the majority chip processor as well, because then of course we have that central point of failure.
Yeah.
More competition is always good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have so many frustrations with Bitmain and MicroBT that I think they could do a lot better than what they're doing right now. And the reason why they don't is because there's not enough competition there to encourage them to stop doing stupid things.
Yeah, when you got the industry on smash, you don't really have to be nice to anybody. When you kind of have a monopoly on it for now,
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it is. I mean, there's some pretty easy ways to improve on it. I wonder. I would imagine that ASICs are going to be continuously made in China going forward. I have trouble seeing the ASIC production moving out of China. So I wonder where Intel does a lot of their computer stuff. I know they have chip plants that they're chip foundries that they're moving in the U.S. and moving out of Taiwan and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean the whole production won't still be in China.
And we're also all talking about Intel, right? But let's be honest, who's going to follow Intel into this? AMD.
Yeah, AMD's had a lot of momentum recently. This is interesting. So I don't know anything about this, but Zorn says Intel backdoors older processors with the Intel management engine. That's a little concerning.
Yep, this is absolutely true.
So what does that mean?
Well, it just means that you know what? I forget what all the details of it are, but essentially it makes it so that they can run like specific commands, I believe, against your processor to figure out, like certain information. But there was something about it though. If I feel like there was some way to disable it or something like that. But I know that it was a concern because in the software that I used to troubleshoot, we had to release a security bulletin about it to let them know. Like to let the customers know that this was, even though it's not our software, right? Like if they bought machines from us, it just so happens they have Intel processors, so we had to warn people.
So the big issue there is like a privacy issue, essentially.
It's a really low-level privacy issue. It's not. I mean, look, like yes, of course, somebody like an advanced attacker could figure out a way, to do something from the processor standpoint. But at the same time, I think that the surface, for these attacks is really, even though it may affect a lot of hardware, I think it's relatively small because of the amount that what can actually be gained. So I'm not, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from like a privacy standpoint, if they want to figure out it sounds like they can use it to figure out what you're doing with your machine. Essentially, all you're doing is generating cryptographic hashes. Maybe they could find your pool data. Is that one of the concerns, you think?
Well, a lot of this is stored in RAM, though. So I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't think they'd be getting access to the RAM. I think it's really only processors. So I really am not 100% sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Stuff to look into for sure.
Exactly. Look, you know what? What's important, right, is to know about it. What's scary is when you don't know about these things and you think everything is rock solid and, you're going around telling everyone that this is rock solid. It's like, yes, it can be, but as you know, it's like we always have to be, it's like we always have to be transparent with, hey, like the reality is this is the hardware we're using and these are the vulnerabilities that come with that hardware.
Gotcha. Zorn says there's a good talk on it on DEF CON. So I'll have to check it out after this. Well, Kanikarus, since I have you here, the residential shitcoin expert, what do you think about the thought of building a futures market for drug prices on Ethereum?
Oh, I'm sorry. Building a what? A futures drug market on Ethereum?
Yeah, futures market for drug prices.
I mean, why?
Just for shits and giggles.
But like, why build it on Ethereum? Why not just build it on Bitcoin?
For them to shut it down and to prove that Ethereum is not immutable in the slightest.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, yeah. If you want to prove that it's a shitcoin, then by all means, that definitely. I just thought you wanted this thing to work. So if you want, that's why I was thinking, like, you might want to build this thing on Bitcoin.
No.
Instead of rug pulling a whole bunch of angry druggies secondly, angry drug dealers. Like these are like the people you just don't want to fuck with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It could be built on Bitcoin. That would be pretty interesting. We've talked a lot about specifically Skeef. I don't know if he's still here. He's got like a little blue dot next to his name. I don't know what that means, but we've talked a lot about online betting markets. And I think it'd be pretty interesting to see how those could be built on Bitcoin or shitcoins.
I mean, Ethereum already had what was it called? Oh, damn it! I'm totally forgetting what the hell it was called. But they already had a like an assassination market, so to speak. I'm totally forgetting the shitcoin though that it was. So I mean, these markets already kind of exist, in the shitcoiny way, and on BTC, the only way that they exist, to my knowledge, is with DLCs, right? The discrete log contracts, which Ben the Carman or Nadav can explain way better than I ever could, so I'm not even going to try. And what's it called? The other one is PTLCs, pointed time lock contracts. So the thing about it is this, right? Even though all this stuff exists, even though this stuff works on Bitcoin, it doesn't have the easy, kind of like the easy user experience that needs to be there at the front end in order to have the quote unquote, mass adoption of that particular feature. So I mean, don't get me wrong, we're gonna get there. We're definitely getting there. But for now, it's not much. It's not much to it's not much to look at, so to speak. Yeah. Like you have to kind of know what you're doing under the, under the covers, right? Like you have to be more technical to make that stuff work.
Gotcha. Oh, there we go. So Skeef, his phone died, and that's why he's not here right now. He'll be back.
Yo.
Oh, go ahead.
We got a question. Hey, so seeing as how like the last 2 years, like the medical and it's kind of been compromised, and it's kind of getting harder and harder to really find a trusted medical professional and everything like that. I don't know, I see Bitcoin basically being a good way to incentivize good doctors anyway to join the network in a sense, like how kind of BISC works basically with like an escrow matching kind of system, and maybe I don't know, maybe we could design a matching system to patients and doctors or medical professionals, licensed to, if there's any way to go about finding out how they're licensed. But I think that's actually pretty good too, seeing as how you can match patients with medical professionals on a network, and you use Bitcoin as payment versus just paying hundreds of dollars a month in medical fees and health insurance that you're probably not even going to use, especially when you're young, that sort of thing. You can just probably do your your once yearly checkup on that application right there. I don't know if anybody's even thought about it. Maybe they have. It's probably already out there.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. So kind of the landscape, I've seen some of this happening, specifically around people trying to get their hands on ivermectin and things like that. And one of the big issues with the medical field is the way that the licensure works, and then the way that one of the things that you really need to practice is insurance against any malpractice insurance. And this is kind of where they get you, because when you're practicing any form of medicine, you're taking on a ton of liability. But I think this is going to be a major thing in the future that we're going to have to solve, where we have underground, like medical services, essentially. And it's just like a hard thing, because like you essentially, like, you're a doctor and you want to start, we've seen the censorship, and we've seen medical boards go after people. I know Jack Cruz, for some of the things that he's talked about over the last year, people have gone after him, and it's going to be a difficult thing to do. And so if you do it, it needs to be underground, for sure.
Yeah, that definitely looks like. I see that being a possibility, like a decentralized healthcare network. Running on Bitcoin, where like the payments could be like conditioned on like services being rendered. Yeah, it could work. I could see it working.
Yeah, as far as like, I think the real solution in the short term, at least, is, it has to be underground, and it has to be built within a trusted network of individuals, and it needs to be very small scale. And I think that's the way that people are going to have to go about it to stay out of the crosshairs of the sludge. In the long term, though, it's an interesting idea. And it's definitely like an interesting idea in countries that have a lot less regulations and scrutiny of the medical world. You go into a lot of developing countries, and they tend to practice non-traditional medicine and do not have, or non-Western medicine, and tend to have a lot less. There's no governing board to oversee.
You mean like in Colombia with the ladies going down there to booty jobs?
Is that, yeah, maybe stuff like that. That might be a good example.
That's like, I think that's like everywhere. You can go to like, I'm sure you could go to Russia. Well, we used to be able to go to Russia, like, and get this job if you was a woman. You could definitely go to the Dominican Republic now. Probably talk to a doctor somewhere, and they'll hook you up with the body of your dreams and all that stuff. So I was like, yeah, I think that's sort of a thing, like, that's easier to be done, like, outside of, definitely the jurisdiction. You know what I mean? Like, and it could be done on a larger scale, and like, that depends. That depends of in the quality of the service. But it could be done, like, especially outside of these G7 countries that want to impose their authority, because if you're giving out something like neutral care, it's not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
Hey, Finn, what's up?
So yeah, I work in the medical field. I found Mr. G's suggestion really interesting of incentivizing medicine. I think incentivizing an outcome-based, process instead of a service-based process is part of the problem we have in the United States. We have service.
So how does everybody feel?
Hold on. Let him finish his thought real quick.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's the first problem that I've seen is everything is service-based. In fact, with observation status versus inpatient, we actually bill per service, and it's usually out of pocket and usually not covered by insurance. And a lot of things are moving to observation status, which just causes, it's caused an even bigger kind of financial burden on people that are trying to seek care. And then the other thing is in the United States do have much larger liability than other countries. Other countries don't allow frivolous lawsuits, and so we have to really be careful. And like insurance, medical malpractice insurance is incredibly expensive. It can be a huge percentage of your actual total income. And so yeah, I think it's an interesting point. Moving to incentivize kind of like a service, outcome-based kind of system instead of a service-based system. You can do an unnecessary surgery, it might not actually fix the problem. But if you incentivize the outcome, which is ultimately like better health, then Sorry, I'm cooking, so I'm kind of distracted here. I was just listening to you guys, but I just really wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, all good. Appreciate it.
I think one of the coolest areas that could be done is in drug rehabilitation, because that's a field that I used to work in, and it was just a nightmare as far as looking at the snake oil that people sold, and the outcome-based payment would fix a lot of those issues there.
Totally agree with that too. Yeah.
And it's funny because it seems like the people that are actually successful in treating people in that field tend to get taken out, essentially. Speaking of which, AK-47 was shilling a book, I think last week, by G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, about, what was it, vitamin B? Skeef, do you remember?
Yeah, let me look. It was something about a cancer treatment.
Yeah. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just like tough. Like as far as like underground medical services, like we've seen over the past year where people have not been allowed to receive medical services because they didn't poison themselves, and it's been a serious concern for a lot of people. And there's a lot of doctors out there putting themselves at risk by treating certain individuals in certain jurisdictions because of that, the ability for frivolous lawsuits to go out and for the scrutiny that's put on people by the medical boards. So it's pretty wild. It is definitely like a very clear example of groupthink and just the ability to cut people off that don't comply. And I think that's been very intentional over a long time to create that environment.
In World Without Cancer is the book at G. Edward Griffin, same guy that wrote Creature from Jekyll Island.
What was his suggestion in that? Vitamin B?
I haven't looked at it at all. I just saw the messages that she put in there about that.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any truth to his claims, that'd be pretty dope, because that would mean that we could all happily use vitamin N, aka nicotine, without any fears.
So CAR T-cell therapy is the most recent cancer treatment. And it basically, they take your white blood cells and they pherese them off or filter them off. And then they send them to a lab. It's somewhere in California, and they're weaponized. And then they like transfuse them back into you. And this treatment is, I believe it's $750,000 out of pocket. I've only given it twice, but it's incredibly expensive and it's not covered by insurance, but it does essentially cure cancer.
That's wild. That'd be pretty good news if it worked.
Monoclonal antibodies were being used too prior to COVID as well. There's quite a few, like Keytruda is a pretty expensive one. Pretty effective though. It took a 6-month death sentence for lung cancer and extended it out about 10, 15 years. So now people pretty much, you can get 10 to 15 years, but the cost is incredibly high, and creates a lot of inequality.
Yeah, we need to deregulate and also unsubsidize the medical field.
Well, those treatments, though, being outside the insurance system probably has their best shot at actually being innovated down in cost. Like that's what I think about. Like every time I drive by a LASIK place, is it's like LASIK has just gotten better and better and better and gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it's almost, in my understanding, is typically paid for out of pocket. It's not, which is not a, I don't know, that's not a great solution for healthcare. There's all kinds of problems specific to healthcare, but I wonder if those treatments existing outside of that system might have benefits.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, one thing I wanted to talk about before we close for the night is I suggested that Joel Osteen start doing this because he's a master of it, but I thought I would do it first before he hops on the train, and maybe I'll get invited to be a speaker at Bitcoin 2023 if I'm successful. But I'm going to start preaching the prosperity gospel of, if you send me Bitcoin, God will send you 10 times back.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I thought that was...
I'll settle for a girlfriend. I really...
Well, if you send me Bitcoin, God will give you a girlfriend too.
You promise?
Mega church. Well, or
well, it's not about my promises. It's not about my
Jim
promise.
Jones started small. Jim Jones started with just a little tiny storefront, so you could have a big future.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, Rope, is it's not about my promises, but it's about your faith in God. You have to believe.
Oh, you're going to make this about me now. Okay.
If you don't believe, it won't come true. But the very first building block to build off of it is you have to send me Bitcoin first, which you can do on the stream because I have a Lightning QR code.
And there's going to be a utopia in Central America, guaranteed.
Yeah. El Salvador. We're bringing it down to El Salvador.
Yeah.
So I want to go to El Salvador so bad, bro. Shit. Everybody's going on. There's going to be no more El Salvador left. Man. But I'm really happy to hear that. This is like good, man. Progress. I had a couple of questions before I closed it up, and I don't know if you guys can hear me because Tucson, you were going in and out.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so all right, I know I'm in here with the big boys. Everybody's kind of like up on the news that thing like that. Basically, like cutting the dollar and everything like that. So, I mean, can I get everyone's opinion on here? What do you think? I read the article that Arthur Hayes put out, and I'm kind of seeing things that way, as far as like countries trying to like make their CBDC backed by some kind of like and then the people will be like fooled into like using it something. Meanwhile, they're not really even holding the reserve asset itself. I don't know. I could get anybody's opinion on what I could do.
I'm sorry, I missed like half of that.
I was going to say plus one for that article. I was just trying to find the title of it just now, but I also really, really enjoyed his most recent article.
Can you go into what the article was about? I heard it mentioned. I didn't check it out.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. So it deals with the fact that now that we've cut off Russia from the dollar system, we've kind of put ourselves in a strange predicament as far as energy and everything like that. So, energy, food production, things like that are going to go up. And the government, seeing as how they've been backed into well, not the government, the reserve, whatever you want to call them, the government, not the government, a bunch of people in the office, whatever you want to call them, essentially they've kind of run usable options, and now the game is kind of over because countries not buy U.S. debt, and especially now after the United States has cut Russia off of the system and everything like that. So I just see like a move towards more commodity currencies and that sort of things. So it's going to be good for our it's going to be good for our favorite asset in the long run.
The name of the article is "Canceling Energy," I think.
Yeah, I put it in the nest. His tweet about it. Very good.
Oh, my bad.
No, all good. Yeah. No, it's good. It's a good one to read.
I enjoyed it too. Very insightful. Very insightful. I can see it all playing out like that.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. What's the deal with everybody being bullish on gold?
I was just going to talk about that. It's like, so they're not going to be doing anything with it because here's the thing, like the economy that we have now, the amount of goods and services have to settle with gold, like unless you want to settle it at the end, and then that's like a completely different monetary send you goods and get paid at the end of the fiscal year. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make.
And I think to be fair to them, like it's a really, really big claim that gold's multi-thousand year history of money has come to an end. Like I personally think it's correct. I think that's exactly what we're seeing. But it is a very big claim. I can see why, especially old people, would have trouble getting their head around that.
Yeah, I mean, but the argument is like gold kind of came to an end in 1971. Or you could even argue before that it was just like pseudo used as a reserve. And so it's not.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they're wrong and going to get wrecked, but I can see how they get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bitcoin definitely is going to demonetize gold and silver. Like gold is a shit coin, people. Why is everybody yelling about gold pumping on? Why is Will Clementine doing his Glassnode account on gold? Why is this a thing?
Well, that's okay. He's killing heat, so.
Yo, who saw him do a whole commercial for some sponsor shilling every piece of crap shitcoin out there? What the hell is that all about? Anybody know what's going on there? It's just because he works with Pump and that's the thing over there?
He's got to pay for that Audi car note and the insurance. I'm sure that's, not cheap.
Did you see, he had a tweet, I don't know how long ago, 8 or 10 months ago, maybe. I think it was less than a year, but it was like, he came out of nowhere and like got a bunch of followers, whatever. And then he said, it's crazy to think 6 months ago I was working at Target. And I remember reading that and thinking, yeah, it might have been a better fit. I don't know.
So the big news.
Dude, we're not even. Oh, sorry.
No, you go, Knickers.
Yo, okay, bro. Yo, you guys heard, you guys seen the video with Sam Bankman-Fried can't tie his shoes? You guys seen that one yet?
No.
Oh man, yeah, it's a video out there.
Knickers.
I don't know how real true that is, but that's hilarious.
Knickers, what were you saying?
No, I'm sorry. I was saying, like, think about it. We're not even. We're like somewhere like 40-something% down, and this guy's already shilling shitcoins. Like, come on, man. You know, like usually that starts around 80% down. You still have like a whole other 100% down to go, and you're already doing this. It's just such a bad look. It's such a, anyways. Hey, look, to each their own, but like he just lost all credibility instantly with that terrible ad.
It is nice how, like, to sniff out the people that are just not worth your time. Like it just, you just kind of have to stick around for a few years and like watch people, because it's like if somebody's a piece of shit, they're gonna fuck up at some point, and it'll come out, and you know everybody will find out that they're a scammer or they're whatever. After a certain
So I want to just cut the kid a little slack. He's like barely 20 years old. I think he's got some smarts, because I think he actually took the time to think about numbers and see trends. And I'm sure he's somewhat directed by other people, but he seems like he's pretty smart. But he's being used, in my opinion, and he's allowing it, for the credibility, the fame, the paycheck, whatever it might be. I almost don't blame him, but to not be able to see, to be like this Bitcoin analyst, wonder kid, and then to see him shilling total shit coins, I don't know, man. He doesn't really understand what he's doing deeply enough, which is a little bothersome, because, like, if he's that smart, why didn't he take the time to really get what Bitcoin actually is? So that's where he really lost me. I'll give him the credit for being a smart kid and get himself to where he is and getting all the followers he got and all that and stuff. But I think he's in over his head a little bit.
Yeah. For me, I just think that whole, I don't know. I think all that stuff is just is I don't know. I think it's just trash. Like for me, like step zero for a trader or somebody like that having any credibility would be like basically, tweeting out or open source, like some way of putting out every single call time-stamped, and signed, and then of that evaluated later versus, whatever different metric you want to use. But it's just like the game that a lot of these guys play is they make the charts but it's like tracking their calls. They're significantly worse than 50-50, and they're not reliable. And there's a lot of people, I think it gives a lot of people a false sense of confidence about like being able to know what price is going to do. It's like, I don't know, people ask me what I think the price is going to do, and I tell them, well, the first time we hit 55K, I was absolutely certain 100K was around the corner, and that was a year and a half ago. So you don't want my price predictions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just a thing. Like when you really think about it, you've got billions of people making decisions for who knows why, and they're irrational to a certain extent or unpredictable in a way that we can't understand. You'd think that Bitcoin would be at 200K right now, just by the merit of everything being so insane and people making a rational decision to exit the system. But that's not the reality. And TA is like this really silly, like Skeef was making a bunch of jokes a while back about how astrology is much more, a much better way to predict price than TA is. And I think there is a ton of truth to that. Even though I don't really buy into astrology, I just have such a low confidence in TA. But I think this is why, like the classic game is to go on CNBC, make a price prediction about something and then trade against it as you're screwing over retail. Like that ultimately is the game if you're a successful trader that has a ton of merit, because at least that in of itself is predictable, that you can go and hoodwink a bunch of people to throw their money at something and trade based on that.
Yeah, but if his trading, if the trading was really working for him, then he wouldn't have to be, shilling shit coins. That's just the way I see it. Like, like to me, it's again, right? None of us are better than our incentives, regardless of his age, regardless of his intelligence. I can't disagree with Jim, right? Like he's super young. He very well could, is, super smart. But at the same time, that doesn't mean, that he has like, the wisdom to handle that intelligence. And you know what? Like,
that was an excellent way to say it. He doesn't have the wisdom to handle his own smarts.
no, I appreciate that. But like, right? Like he's not better than his incentives. So, possibly the trading didn't go that well. And as a result, now you're stuck chilling shitcoins, or you feel, right? He feels that this is the only thing he can do, which that also sucks, because he probably could just maybe work on the trading instead of shilling the trading.
Well, yeah, he's a shitty trader. He hasn't figured out the scam yet. Yeah, I'm more so talking about TA in the traditional sense than Will Clementine at this point.
Yeah, no, look, technical analysis. So I consider myself an amateur stock trader, right? And this is something that I did always on the side of my job. And I learned, about, candles and looking at, minute charts and point and figure charts and stuff like that. And look, all this stuff all it is tools to tell you previous price confirmation. And then they extrapolate from that possible price, dynamics as to where it could go based on all the previous activity. So you're always just looking at the past. Every time you're looking at these tools, even when they project into the future, they are projecting the past into the future. Even though they're giving earnings, let's say for the next quarters or whatever it is, they're using all of the data from the past to project that. So it's going to be wrong. It's not always going to be right. There's always going to be black swans. And the reason why they're black swans is because those algorithms, they can't account for them. So it's, T&A, it's one thing if you want to pick an entry point, right? Let's say you have a bunch of money, all of a sudden you have $10,000 or $20,000 and you want to buy some Bitcoin, right? And you decide, all right, I want to get in, and you know that you're going to be holding this for a long time. So you want to try to find a long entry. Okay? Technical analysis could be helpful in figuring out a range as to where to get in, right? Or if you really want to do this full time, right, and trade full time, then technical analysis is worthwhile because you're constantly going to be going in and out of Bitcoin. And at the end of every single trading day, you never hold Bitcoin. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a trader. You never hold the asset. It's like all you're trying to do is trade it. So, but Bitcoin isn't the same as all the other assets because it's better than money. So anyways, I stay away from the trading and I just DC it.
Phil, I always thought if you were going to trade Bitcoin, the thing to do would be to always default back into Bitcoin, even if it went against you, because all you got to do is wait. And that to me makes more sense if you believe the underlying better asset to hold is the Bitcoin versus the dollars. From a trader's perspective, you were always trying to build more dollars. You didn't care about the position, the company, the stock. It was always just about moving in and out to accumulate more dollars. But in this case, I would have my stop loss in the opposite direction, defaulting me always back into Bitcoin. Does it seem reasonable? I don't know. You seem pretty smart about this trading stuff. I'm not a trader. It was just this thought I had.
No, exactly. That's exactly the point. That's why I don't like trading Bitcoin. I don't think it's worthwhile. That's why I rather just DCA, because at the end of the day, once we learn enough, we just want to hold Bitcoin. I don't give a shit to hold cash. So that's the crux of it. But these guys, if they're just trying to trade it because they believe in fiat, they're going to get fucking burned. You know it. I know it.
Yeah, what you're describing, Jim, is
definitely.
What you're describing is trading dollars.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing to trade instead. Trade it against the hard asset that isn't getting debased, and then you just that's what you want to accumulate more of anyway. Yeah. So all right, whatever. I'm never going to be a trader, I don't think, but that just seems to be the right perspective to take with Bitcoin only.
I just wanted to say that I was on a Spaces last night, kind of like a Bitcoin hater, and he basically says shit, but they mark up the the USDT price. Well, they could just basically like make Bitcoin price as anything. They just need more people to come in and pump, kind of make excuses for like and bullshit like that. I mean, the only thing with like credible to me is that the whole illiquid supply and everything like that. Just the fact that it kind of prevents. Other than that, like it's a whole shit show of trading exchanges. I'm sure of that. Like it's definitely gonna be a big ass hack coming after another one. You know.
Yeah. I would just tell them to have fun staying poor. It's
all right, guys. It's been real. It's been fun. I'm getting out of here. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Thanks for sharing your expertise in the drug market.
Oh man, anytime, bro. That's about all I can. Appreciate it.
Very helpful. Well, yeah. I think I'm going to wrap down the stream, keep the spaces open. Been going for about 2 hours. Keith, do you have any shout outs you want to do?
No, I don't think so.
I just want to thank you guys for hosting again. I always love talking about Bitcoin. You guys always come up with some smart things to talk about. We get a decent crowd that seems to want to hang out and listen to us. So thanks everybody for that. And see you again next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah.
See you there.
One thing I'll shout out. So tomorrow in Gilbert, we're going to be having a Bitcoin meetup. There's going to be Azteco terminals there. You can buy Bitcoin for cash, get off the exchanges. I'm pretty stoked about that. Stoked what Doug's doing at BitRamp, and what he's essentially doing. He's trying to get these Azteco terminals out all over the place. Kind of to summarize what I talked about earlier on this, I've got a terminal with me that I'm going to be carrying around and offering to sell people Bitcoin. I might set up a pop-up, set up at one of the pop-up markets down the street or at a farmer's market and start distributing Bitcoin for cash. Hopefully, I want to see people's first interaction with Bitcoin, non-KYC, and them going straight into self-custody. I'm just tired of the bullshit, and this seems like a pretty good opportunity to do that. So I'm pretty stoked on that. But yeah, we got cool things going on with the Arizona Bitcoin Network. One of our guys there, Santos, he was able to orange pill coffee roaster, and they are accepting Bitcoin for coffee, which is super dope. And we're just starting to see these things. Like it's kind of one of those slowly then suddenly scenarios with what's happening in Arizona. Like Wendy Rogers sucks. The politicians suck. The whole push for, legal tender, whatever. What's happening is we're minting new Bitcoiners on a regular basis. And wherever you are, I think it's good to be involved in your meetup and, doing these things, teaching people about self-custody, teaching people about how to interact with Bitcoin in a non-KYC manner, teaching people about home mining. I'm going to be doing a home mining presentation sometime in the future. I forgot what the date was. Santos is going to be doing a Lightning Network presentation. He does great Lightning Network presentations, but I think, we're going to move fast. And of all the talking about trading and bullshit, when you're trading, you're not producing anything of value. And Bitcoin, there's so much opportunity to produce things of value, and do, really cool opportunities to, be compensated in Bitcoin potentially. And I think that's much more exciting because what money is a representation of value, and you earn it by producing value, not by sitting on your ass and trading on Coinbase Pro. So I'm stoked on that. Shout out to the sponsor of the show, Dirtbags Bar in Tucson, Arizona, the best place to meet your future ex-wife. Skeef and I still haven't been there, haven't gone there, but it's a great bar. Best bar in the world. You got anything to say about Dirtbags?
I drove by it one day last week. It's still there, still full of the absolute dredges of society. It's right by the University of Arizona, right by the Greek part of the University of Arizona. So if you want to go there and hang out with a bunch of 21-year-old Greek folks who have all the answers, that's your spot.
Yeah. Wonderful place. It is the Garden of Eden of Tucson. But with that, I want to thank everybody in chat tonight. Thank you, Zorn, for the 2 sats. Pledit, thank you for the comments. And thank you, everybody in Spaces, for tuning in to celebrate the end of the petrodollar. Have a good one. I'll see you guys next week.